Even though this brush is included in the program, I think it's just good for you to see how it was created, and you should create one with me. That way you'll get an idea of how these brushes are created. Let's start a new file, and let's zoom in on it, 100%. Let's open this window nice and wide. And I start off with my pen tool. I pretty much use the pen tool for all my drawing needs. And we're going to create a little tiny clump of grass. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag a handle out and come up and click and drag, which becomes an area of the blade of grass. Change direction to return on itself. Here I'm going to option click on the point and pull out a new handle. Come down really close to the original point, click and drag, and then hold down the option, just click on that point there and close it off. Now the beauty of these paths is that at any time I can go in there and adjust it if necessary, so I can tighten this up a little more if necessary and so on. Make it nice and clean like that. Now I'm going to create a second blade right next to it. This one's going to be almost vertical. Straight up, option click, bring it down, close it off, option click and close. Again, I can easily go in there and modify this if I need to. Now we'll create the last one, a third one on this side. And we'll give this one a nice little curl like that. And let's close it off. Now we could very easily go in there and just take this one and flip it, but we want them all three to look different. That's going to create a lot of variety and randomness to our image and make the grass look more realistic. Now that we have the three little blades of grass created, I go to my paths, and there they are. I'm going to save it now, so we can save it for later. And I'm going to go ahead and fill it with black. Now, I filled it with black because that's going to make an opaque brush. Anything that's not white has a level of transparency. The white that we see back here will be completely transparent. It's very much like a layer mask, except the colors are in reverse. Where it's white, it's transparent, and where it's black, it's opaque. If I wanted to have inside here a little stem, perhaps, that means that the blade of grass would have to be a gray tone so that I could see the stem in between. Unfortunately, once I make it gray, it's going to be transparent. But these are blades of grass. They're real simple, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to select the area with my marquee and define it as a brush. We can now dispose of it. Throw it away and deselect. It has been stored, so I'm going to select my brush and come up here, and there's our little clump of grass. So I select that, and what does it do? It does exactly what you would expect it to do as I drag it across the screen. It just makes these little kind of a border of spikes, you might say. So this is where we have to go into our brushes palette and modify it. Here we see the little representation of what the stroke is doing. And it's doing exactly what you would expect it to. It's just moving the blades across. I'm going to go into my brush tip and make it smaller. And we can see it right here on the screen how small it becomes. That's a good size. The spacing, we might want to add a little spacing to it, but most of the real alterations are going to be made in the other windows. I'm going to go into Shape Dynamics, and I'm going to turn off the pen pressure. Turn that off. But I am going to push the size jitter to 100%. That means that along the way, each time it places a brush tip, the brush tip is going to be a different size. There's a little one right there, and a very big one right next to it. Now, some of the little ones can get as small as a single dot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my minimum diameter up a bit so that it's not going to get any smaller than 20% of the size of the brush. So that's going to make some nice little specks right in the back there. The angle, I'm going to turn that just a little. See, just enough so that I'm going to get a little variety. I can go pretty far, but that's not what grass does. So we're just going to go a little bit just to give it a little randomness right through there. I'm going to go to my scattering. And in scattering, I'm going to pull this back a little so it's a little tighter as a clump and increase the count a bit. That's going to give me a nice bunch of grass here and there. The count jitter is set to 100%, which means it's going to randomize the amount of count that it lays down. You'll notice that it's a little open here, a clump here, a little less there, another tight clump over here. So it's a random clumping of these counts as I move my stroke across. The only other thing I'm going to do to my grass brush is going to color dynamics. And the foreground and background is set to 100%. That means it's going to alternate between the foreground and background colors and give me a nice range for each brush tip based on those two particular colors. Pushing the hue jitter slightly up is going to introduce some additional tones in there. Don't want to push it up too high because then it's going to introduce unwanted colors like reds and purples that you might not want in your grass. Saturation can be played with. That's just going to intensify the amount of color that's being laid to each brush tip, as will the brightness. That's all we need right now. Now, unfortunately, we can't see the color in the preview window. That's something we're going to have to actually apply onto the canvas. Our brush is ready to go, so I'm going to click OK. And let's choose a nice bright green for our foreground. And for the background color, we'll pick this dark green here. And as I lay a stroke, let's put it in a layer. As I lay a stroke across, we get the nice little clump of grass. Now you might want to, at this point, change to a much darker green. And another layer behind this, fill in some of those dark areas with the darker grass, and you get a nice body of grass right through the area. The colors that you use are going to determine the type of grass that it is. In the case of my painting here, it's dunes, which are kind of dry, so instead of using bright greens, I used very muted greens and different tones of beige to create the grass. The sense of depth that we have here is caused by the size of the brush. Here I work with a certain size, a smaller size, and a very small size way in the background.